Hello and welcome to the MLB DFS on the RotoRadar Podcast. My name is Joshua Riemer, joined by none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Jared Block. Jared, how are you doing on this fine Monday afternoon, sir?
I'm doing well. I wish that the weather was doing as well, but it's just been matching the MLB schedule the last several days. Just rain everywhere, so that's where I'm at today. It doesn't have any end in sight, but you know what? I'm here for it. We got a nice little 6-game slate to kick off the week.
Yeah, man, nice little small slate. Had some day games, not too many day games. I mean, it's a travel day. Monday, Thursdays are usually travel days for the MLB, so you get a little bit of a reduced schedule. We get a nice little slate to talk about today, and I'm excited to do it with you. So let's get into it, man.
Yep. If you guys are watching on the YouTube, feel free to give us a follow and a like on the show. We would greatly appreciate it. Also, we'll be going DFS game by game here, and then we'll talk about props after we break down the game in general. So any comments, questions, hot takes, just throw them in the chat, and we'll go ahead and get started here. First game on the slate is going to be the Cleveland Guardians and the New York Yankees. Right now, the Guardians are coming in as a plus 114 underdog behind Cal Quantrill. Domingo Germán for the Yankees minus 134 at home as the favorite. 8.5 is the total for this game. Weather, we're still kind of in the thick of all this rain stuff today. Thankfully, is one of the more calmer days in terms of that. So I don't think we get any postponements on this slate, but there is weather in this Yankees game to kind of potentially play around with here. Winds blowing out to left at 10 miles an hour is certainly really, really good here. And it looks like, hopefully the new rules of the MLB this year are going to help this game play fully and play through without any delays. But what are you seeing on that end? And I guess we'll start with the Guardian side.
From what I've heard, there's most likely we end up avoiding the delay. This is according to Roth. When I looked at the weather, I kind of agree. It mostly looks like light rain at most. So I'm not expecting it to at least postpone the game. I'm definitely expecting them to play through. Maybe you get unlucky and get a delay, but I think that's fine because you're not really looking at pitchers for this one. In terms of guys that I want, I don't see a lot that I love here. I think this Yankees offense looks lost right now without Judge in the lineup, and we know that he's not going to be starting again today. We know that Domingo Germán has been pretty solid this year. I mean, 30% K rate, swinging strike stuff has been at 17%, which shows that 30% number might actually improve as the year goes on, which is kind of insane considering that that's a pretty high number for Domingo Germán. Problem is, runs into a very tough lineup where there's a lot of guys who don't strike out in this lineup. I would probably just end up staying away from both sides. But I don't mind Jose Ramirez if you're looking to single out some batters here. You're looking for low K guys against Domingo, and Ramirez definitely fits that bill. Josh Naylor as well, Steven Kwan, all three of those guys, pretty low K rates at the end of the day. So don't mind going to any of those three. Also get the advantage of the short porch and right, but I don't even think it deserves to be a top 5 stack today, most likely. And that's saying something considering that there's only 12 teams on the slate.
Yeah, this one kind of feels like a stalemate. We brought it up in the chat and Discord earlier. You don't really ever want to mess around with Cal Quantrill on either side. You don't want to really pitch him or use him. You don't really want to take bats against him. Certain situations definitely make sense. On the other side, like you said, I think we're both on the side of the stuff for Domingo taking a step in the right direction this year and not as much blow up worthy. Obviously, there'll be spots where he might be more prone to that. I don't know. I just think this is kind of a stalemate situation. Not really a game that we love on this slate. The Jose Ramirez point is really solid. I want to just state right now that the third base position on the DFS sites, I think, is the most important position outside of pitcher today to get right. You have a lot of really top end third baseman today, so maybe you're playing 2 of them on a site like FanDuel, but it's going to be a really pivotal moment. So not sure if I want to put Jose up there where there are other guys that maybe are a little bit better plays.
Yeah, for sure. I can get behind that.
Outside of that, I mean, I don't really have anything here, honestly. I don't have any interest in Yankees like you, and Jose Ramirez fantasy score would be the only thing I'd be looking at for props, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. There's just a lot better spots that I'm willing to target elsewhere on this slate, and I think this one's just kind of a passer through one.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the other 7:05 game. It's going to be the Chicago Cubs and the Washington Nationals right now, the Cubs are coming in as, excuse me, a -132 road favorite behind Drew Smiley. Mackenzie Gore for the Nationals plus 112 at home. 8 is the total for this game. Um, See this Chicago team just been really consistent against the Marlins. Obviously, Marlins was a different game entirely, different series entirely, but we get to see hopefully some actual baseball being played in Washington today. Looks like if anything, they'll just wait out an early game delay. But man, I don't know if you saw, and we don't. I mean, we have some time, I guess, to talk about this, but Washington grounds crew at Nationals Park lives up to the hype once again by completely botching a delay postponement scenario over the weekend. But I think they should play today.
Yeah, I heard about the whole botching. I mean, Washington has been botching these weather spots for the past, 5 years now, so not all that surprising to see. This should be an interesting matchup and at least an interesting test to see what exactly Mackenzie Gore has in his arsenal so far this season, because we've seen a lot of good Mackenzie Gore outings so far this season, right? I would make a case that he's coming up as one of the best young pitchers in the MLB in terms of having really good strikeout stuff, limiting damage for the most part. He's been really good. He's been living up to the bill, and he was a main part of that Juan Soto trade. So so far so good. The problem is this Cubs team has been elite against left-handed pitching. Second best in the MLB, has been really solid throughout the whole entire season so far. Feels like we have a pretty good sample size under our belt now. I mean, it's not necessarily huge. We'll look at better stuff as the season goes on, but at the end of the day, this is the second best team in the MLB when it comes to their weighted runs created above average. They're striking out at a decent heavily clip at 23%, but that doesn't matter when they're getting these hits, having some pretty good at-bats against lefties. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem like a spot that I would necessarily want to bank on. So while I love Mackenzie Gore, I feel like I've talked about him a ton so far this season. This doesn't feel like the spot to go to him.
No, it doesn't. I do respect what the Cubs have done in bolstering their lineup against left-handed pitching this year, and it's just a scary spot. Especially, maybe we'd be considering it a little bit more if the price tag was any better on FanDuel. I just think it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, shout out to him being really, really good to get his price up to where it should be. But DraftKings 8,100, I think, is a better spot. But again, I think I like the pitcher on the other side actually a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. I will say, before we move on, one guy I wanted to highlight on this Cubs team, Cody Bellinger, finds himself in a rocking spot today. Mackenzie Gore has been supreme reverse splits so far to start out the year. Against lefties, allowing a 536 weighted on base average, a 375 isolated power. Both of those numbers incredibly high. Some high hard contact numbers too. And Cody Bellinger's actually been doing really well against lefties. He's had the power against them. He's not striking out against them all that much. His expected WOBA's all the way up to 445. So I don't mind the Bellinger spot. I think it's probably one of the better GPP one-offs that you can get on a slate like this where you try to make yourself different. I wouldn't be surprised to see Bellinger come in under 10% owned.
He's also really just, I know he's had a couple down years since his MVP stuff, but I think he's really liking hitting in Chicago right now. And the spot actually does suit up really well for him in terms of weather. The wind is blowing out at 12 miles an hour towards right center. So, yeah, I think he's starting to really turn it on. And, this Cubs team throughout the first month, not a full disaster. They really turned it around, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. Cubs probably still going to fall out of the top 5, though. I think we just respect Gore enough. Maybe they get there with the bullpen towards the end of the game, but still probably going to fall out the top 5 here. There will be a lot of really good bats late on the slate and also in this next game that we're going to talk about. But let's move over to the other side and talk about the Drew Smiley spot because he's had a pretty good year to start the good first month to start the season as well. 4.57 xFIP doesn't really tell the whole tale, honestly. Obviously elite stuff to lefties, and he, was flirting with that no-no against the Dodgers. Didn't have the best start the next game out, but I do think this is potentially a spot where I'd have some interest here. The problem is that I don't think there's much K upside at all on this spot. He just might have a really good pitching outing.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think he can limit damage here, at least somewhat. I mean, the Nationals aren't necessarily the worst team against left-handed pitching, but the main thing that sticks out to me, 15% K rate so far this year against left-handed pitching. I know this projected lineup has a bit higher, but I still think it's going to be hard for Smiley to get too many strikeouts here. I'd probably just end up staying away, on all honesty. Not really interested in any of these Nationals hitters either. I guess if you wanted to get someone in there, you could get someone like Stone Garrett or Lane Thomas, but most likely just going to stay away from this side and from this situation. This Cubs
Yeah,
bullpen has
yeah.
also been pretty good so far, so not much to love.
No, not much at all. By the way, no Stone today, unfortunately, which they really dropped the
Gotcha.
ball on. Lane Thomas in the 6 hole. I just don't like. I don't like the leadoff Alex Call spot today, and then everything else. Maybe Garcia you can talk me into, but he's a lefty, so it's not really something I want to take a look at. So, keep Ruiz the only guy that maybe makes some sense, but I think you're stretching a little bit here. So, thoughts on Smiley just in general, maybe as an SP2 option? There doesn't seem to be that many options there. Are we kind of just paying up at both spots?
I think it's fine for DraftKings where you're getting him at 7,800. You know that DraftKings relies on him being more of a just proficient
Quality.
pitcher. Yeah,
Yeah.
quality pitcher rather than getting a whole bunch of strikeouts. And that's certainly a role he could find himself in tonight. So I don't mind the SP2 call over there.
All right. Prop stuff here. I checked and there's no Cody as of this
I
moment.
know, sad.
He does have 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs on sleeper picks, which is nice. But I'm not super thrilled. I think today's pool. Thankfully, we have some NBA games that are pretty juicy, but today's MLB player pool is actually pretty thin, outside of like 2 or 3 teams today.
Yeah, I think it's mostly the rain stuff probably coming into play a little bit here because like nothing is like really threatening postponement, but a lot of this stuff could potentially delay things, and I feel like it
Oh
just
yeah.
throws odds off a bunch.
Well, if Smiley's out, or like either of these pitchers don't get more than 5 innings because of a delay, that changes the concept of the whole game. So,
Yeah,
say a Suzuki 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs is at least a play I'll throw out there. Although I don't feel the greatest about it.
yeah, for sure.
All right, let's go ahead and move on here. Not too much to discuss the first couple of games of the slate, but this one here is potentially one of the best spots on the board in terms of a full game. It's Toronto and Boston right now. The Blue Jays are a -154 moneyline road favorite here behind Jose Barrios. Corey Kluber for the Red Sox +130 at home. 10 is the total for this game. The biggest thing that screams off the board for me is that this Blue Jays team sees Corey Kluber extremely well. For those of you who have been on social media or been in the Discord today, you know that we like what the Blue Jays bring to the table today against Corey Kluber. They've been quite popular over the last week in really good spots, and they've actually kind of failed in a lot of those spots, especially against the Mariners. So hopefully they can turn it around today. You also add in the fact that it's going to be no rain risk, 50 degrees at Fenway Park, winds blowing out to left towards the Green Monster at 11 miles an hour. Sets up pretty nicely for this Blue Jays team.
Yeah, I really like this Blue Jays team. I think they carry the conversation of being the number one stack. We know that Kluber hasn't been very good this year. The ground ball rate has been horrendous. Only thing that's keeping him alive really is that his hard contact isn't that high. It's only at 34% to start out the year. So maybe that saves him a little bit here, but there's a ton of hitters in this lineup that generate their own hard contact to where I think he's going to have some troubles. Really like Vlad and Chapman. I think those are your 2 top hitters in this lineup. At the end of the day, you're looking for guys that can create their own hard contact. And so far this season, those have been the 2 guys that have been able to do it. Vlad so far this year, a 47% hard contact against righties. Chapman, one of the top hard contacts in the league so far at 52%. Right. So really like both of them. I think they're your top 2 hitters. Then third, I'd probably say Bo Bichette's my third favorite. Has some really good BVP numbers on Kluber already, but also red hot. Has hit 2 home runs in the past 4 days. Had that 460-foot monster. I think it was yesterday. Maybe it was the game before that, but he's been absolutely smashing the ball recently, especially with that big home run. He's feeling himself, and he's also hit really well in Fenway too. Has his 3rd most home runs in Fenway, has almost 1,000 OPS in Fenway, and it makes sense. I mean, this ballpark is so good for right-handed hitters. all these righties should be able to absolutely mash here. So I like them all. I like all the righties. And I think my top three would be Chapman, Guerrero, and Bichette. But that doesn't leave out guys like Springer, Danny Jansen, if he makes the lineup instead of Alejandro Kirk. And I think the lefties are okay. I favor righties a little bit more here, though, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. I mean, everybody that's following the show probably has already seen that Matt Chapman's PvP is the nuts today. Obviously, that's a small sample size, and he could still do well with only one hit and 4 plate appearances or something. But I still think that everything sets up really well for this Blue Jays right-handed squad. I think that that's. I think that they're the number one stack on the slate. We can talk about San Diego. We can talk about Houston. Even can talk about the Dodgers as well, but I do think that the Blue Jays, for how many times they always come up as statistically and data driven a top implied team total, this one I do believe in.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
Okay. If Twitter would stop being on an endless loop, I could actually pull up the lifetime stuff for Chapman. But here it is: 5 for 5 lifetime and 6 plate appearances, 1 single, 2 doubles, 2 home runs. And he's seeing the ball really well. 5 of the last 7 times he's cleared this total bases number. So, do we want to? We'll talk about the Red Sox next, and then we'll go and talk about props here. So the spot for Barrios against the Red Sox. Definitely something where they're going to load up with a lot of lefties here. Confirmed that they're going to have 7 lefties in this lineup. The only righties being Kike Hernandez and Justin Turner. I know that the xFIP is solid. The strikeout rate's solid. Even the ground ball rate's really good for him too. So has he kind of deferred away from being a guy that gives up a lot of hard contact to lefties to start the year off? Or is it something we should regress back to?
I think so. I mean, the numbers don't look that bad. So obviously his numbers are
No, they
better
don't.
against right-handed pitching or right-handed hitters so far this year. ISO's been very limited, under 0.05. Ground ball rate's been really good at 51%, allowing a little bit of hard contact, but not too much. But the left side is what's really interesting because the numbers aren't necessarily the greatest. 301 WOBA, 167 ISO, but all the underlying stats see really good improvement compared to what we were seeing last year. Ground ball rate at 47%. That is a solid ground ball rate for sure. Hard contact at 36% is very solid. K rate at 24%. He's not walking lefties either. So I don't know. I think people will load up on Boston. They love to load up on Boston and Fenway, especially on these small slates. Yep. I don't really see it. I could see Barrios doing quite well here, in all honesty.
I think that so this is a really nice spot to talk about the third base position because you have 2 elite third basemen in this game. We talked about Jose Ramirez already, covered Patrick Wisdom in the Chicago game. I think that you can make a lot of cases that Matt Chapman's probably your best third base play. We'll talk about Max Muncy as well later, but I do really like what Chapman brings to the table. Think that Devers can get there. I do think that, while Boston, I'm not super thrilled about rostering them in DFS, but I do think that there are lefties that can do pretty well here. Historically, Alex Verdugo has been a guy that's hit him well. Masataka has been just on fire in general. So I think that maybe those things regress a little bit for Barrios. The third base conversation aside, I think that at the same time, as much as maybe he has improved on this handedness, we talked about Barrios earlier in the year being a guy who pitched in the World Baseball Classic and struggling in his first 2 starts was a pretty big indicator of that. Now he's really turned it around the past 3. You'll take a look at the last 2 spots specifically, and they are Chicago White Sox and Houston Astros. Both those teams don't really have as many lefties to bring to the table, so maybe that's part of it.
I mean,
the Rays can be lefty heavy. What are you gonna say? I mean, I know.
I was just gonna say Houston has 2 of the best lefties in the league when it comes to power hitting, for sure. Right. So, yeah.
I'm just saying that they had 7 righties in that matchup, most likely. So, I don't know. It's kind of a weird box score look for Jose Barrios. At least we can both agree that Chicago he was supposed to do really well and did. So, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that Boston still finds themselves close to being a top 5 option just because of the way the slate is. It's not close. Toronto is the better spot, but I will at least throw out there that I think you can target some lefties for this team.
I kind of disagree. I don't know. I think you're
Okay.
taking a big
All right.
risk on such a not a big slate, but I feel like there's just better options. Like we're going to talk about Padres, going to talk about Astros, and why I think they're potentially contending for that top spot in terms of top stacks on the slate. Like the problem that I have is that all of these lefties in this lineup have high ground ball rates. So the only lefties that are under a 40% ground ball rate is Duran in the 5 hole and Cassis in the 7 hole. Everyone else is 40% or higher. And the top 3 guys in this lineup, Devers, Yoshida, and Verdugo, all over 45%. So like it could happen for you. I don't doubt it. We've seen in the past that Barrios has the ability to give up some power numbers for sure and some high hard contact numbers. I'm just saying like taking the risk on it feels more GPP-ish than anything else.
Oh, that I mean, yeah, excuse me, that I agree with. I mean, Toronto's the cash game play there. I again, Boston. Maybe it's just I think where I'm trying to focus on this is having one of those guys in a 5 flex scenario for price picks. Like that's probably where I would say we would have some looks. Although I do think that maybe it's some of the NBA stuff's really good too, so you don't have to really force that into your stuff today. So, all right. Do we talk about props now? I guess I want to focus mostly on do they have anything on Chapman besides total bases? No, unfortunately they don't. But I still think that that's a really solid spot. Bichette number for hitter fantasy score looks pretty good. I think everything looks pretty solid, man. I don't really think there's nothing that you can completely dismiss on the Blue Jays side.
Yeah, I would say the only thing you're dismissing is the lefty numbers. Probably not really a fan of Belt, not really a fan of Kiermaier. But
Kiermaier
everything else.
Hit. Yeah, the model says he hasn't hit. He's hit once in the last 10 games, so he's pretty cool.
I will say that like there's a halfway decent chance that Jose Barrios gets over this 4 pitcher strikeout number. I mean, he's gone under it once, and it was against a Houston team that does not strike out basically at all. So like, I just think this is incredibly a low number to give him, and I think people are underestimating just how good the numbers look so far this year. You add in the fact that get a pitcher's ump in there, and he's looking really solid.
Is that confirmed, or are you just waiting on that?
No, I'm waiting on that. I don't know. We don't have that data yet.
Okay. On the Boston side, the only thing I was going to bring up was Masataka. Like, I just think that he is on a different level as of this moment in terms of just clearing the fantasy score number. So that was really all I had to bring up there. And like I mentioned earlier, Verdugo has seen him well. So if you want to go with that, then go with that. But limit exposure to Boston, I think.
I would be enticed by the Verdugo number, and that's probably it.
7 is a little bit low for a leadoff guy.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's keep on moving here. We have to talk about another really good spot. We're going to have good spots in every single game all the way through. So San Francisco and Houston is going to be next. The Giants, the plus 154 money line underdog here, making the trip from Mexico City. Ross Stripling being the underdog. Luis Garcia for the Astros, minus 184 at home. 8.5 is the total. First thing I want to say here, and this is going to lead into my take, and I'm sure this is going to lead into your take as well. MLB needs to have more Mexico City baseball. That's the first. That's the first thing.
No, the game should not be like that.
Dude, like, imagine being a pitcher and you're like, why do I have to start in this rotation for this series?
It'd be awful.
Yeah, bad for the numbers. Really, really good for us. We nailed that first game and second game. Wish it was a little bit more, but can't complain all the way there. So that brings me to my next point of the Giants are coming in with an absolutely tattered bullpen. Like, they got shellacked for the last couple of days. Yesterday, obviously not as much, but still, they've gone through a lot of stuff, and Stripling's one of their last arms in terms of quality for the starting pitching group, and everything kind of profiles pretty well for this Astros squad. So not a great look in terms of what the Giants just had to play through, and now coming in facing this Astros team, things should definitely flip in the right direction for these Astros hitters today.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this spot. I think Stripling's honestly just not being a very good pitcher at this moment. I mean, the 4.5 xFIP would certainly say otherwise. but the ground ball rate's not great at 38%. The hard contact is tremendous at 50% as of right now. And his home runs per 9 against right-handed hitters is currently the highest in the league, with the qualifier that they've pitched at least 10 innings versus a right-handed hitter. He's all the way up at like 4.9 per 9 when it comes to home runs, which is an insane number. Like anything over 1.5 is considered relatively high, but to be all the way up in the 4 range, of course that number is going to regress. He's going to have some positive regression go his way, but possibly not here, not in Minute Maid. That's already kind of tailored to right-handed hitters for the most part. It's like the 8th friendliest home run park for right-handed hitters. This is a great spot for Pena. This is a great spot for Bregman. I think it is a good spot for Jose Abreu to get back on track a little bit here as well. And even Jolks at the bottom of this lineup is another righty that I could get behind. And I don't mind the lefties too, right? Like Jordan and Tucker come into this spot where Stripling hasn't allowed a lot of ISO to lefties, but I think that's just good luck on his part. His hard contact against lefties is at 52%. Like it's only a matter of time before a lefty hits a home run against them. And who better than Jordan Alvarez or Kyle Tucker, two of the better hitters in the MLB when it comes to southpaw hitters. So I really like Jordan. He's been red hot recently, has 2 home runs in the past 5 games. Kyle Tucker's been a little bit on the slow side, but I can understand going there. Jeremy Pena's been really hot. He's had 2 home runs in the past 4 games, 3 home runs in the past 6. So, like, I really like this spot for this Houston team. You add on the fact that, like you mentioned, this bullpen's kind of tattered and bruised a little bit here, but they're also coming in before the Mexico series. They were already one of the worst bullpens in the MLB. Now they've allowed the second most home runs in the MLB. They have one of the highest weighted on base averages allowed in the MLB. Like, there's so many negatives going against this poor Giants team today. I think Houston could absolutely destroy them tonight.
Yeah, agreed. I want to get your thoughts on Mauricio Dubon because he was on this absolute tear, had an awesome hit streak going, just broke it 2 days ago, and has not looked good in those 2 games against Philly. I know we respect Philly, but last night's matchup against Falter obviously was a good one. So do we believe in the Dubon spot? If so, he's not necessarily a must, but he should be highly considered.
Yeah, I certainly don't mind it. I think it's good. I mean, you're getting a 3K leadoff hitter or a below 3K leadoff hitter in a really good lineup. I can get behind it 100%.
Yeah, okay. I think it's really tough for me to say that Toronto is not the number 1, but Houston makes it very close.
They do. I mean, they're at least the number 2, like pretty clearly.
They're absolutely number 2. Yeah, I mean, I have some interesting. We can talk about the Padres next. I feel like maybe people. Yeah, I'll save that take when we get there. But yeah, Houston definitely coming in. You've seen the live movement shift 20 points in Houston's direction as well. So yeah, I think everything kind of lines up pretty nicely with that.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, let's focus on the other side and talk about this Giants team is going to come in against the spot against Luis Garcia. This season specifically, Garcia's had a pretty similar xFIP dating back to last season at 4.51. Strikeout rate 26%. The swinging strike rate is really impressive at 15% to start the year. Looks like he's kind of figured it out, giving up a little bit of more hard contact to righties like we've seen in the past. But I do think that he's had a good start to the year. So what do we do with this? Like, how do we view the Giants team going from, a massive downtick in terms of park factor? Like, I know Houston's still up there, but it's not Mexico City.
No, it's certainly not. I don't really know how they'll adjust to the fact. I wish I had some numbers on what happened last year because they played a Mexico City series last year, didn't they? Someone did. I'm not saying the Giants necessarily, but
yeah, they definitely did one last year. I don't remember. I think the Padres play it every year.
I don't remember who did it. I don't remember how they did afterwards. I'll look that up after we get off the show today. I should have looked it up beforehand. But I think this is a really good spot for Garcia. Take all the Mexico City stuff out of it. Just consider the fact that Garcia is facing off against this lineup that is pretty lefty heavy. That would automatically scare you considering he's a little bit worse against lefties, right? The weighted on base average goes up. The ISO goes up. The ground ball rate is already relatively low for him in general. The hard contact isn't the best. The thing that I think gets him through this start is most likely the K rate. His K rate's at 25% against lefties, but you look up and down this lineup, every single lefty in this lineup outside of Lamonte Wade has over a 25% K rate against right-handed pitching. And you add in the fact that a lot of these guys are higher than 25%. Jock is at 25%, but Conforto's at 30%, Blake Sabal's at 39%, Blake Wisely is at 33% right now. Like, all of these lefties have incredibly high K rates. I think that's what's going to really screw them over against Luis Garcia. He also seems to have found his stuff, man. I mean, you look at the last two starts compared to how he started out the year, two tough opponents against Toronto and Tampa Bay, and really, really good performances with a combined 16 strikeouts, went 13 innings, didn't give up any earned runs in either one of those starts. Like, he's looked elite right now. So, like, you add in the fact that he's doing pretty well at this moment. This Giants team probably has a little bit of a hangover after that Mexico City series. They also don't really line up well against him anyway. I think Luis Garcia is you're clearly determined SP1, and it's not really. I don't think anyone gives him a battle for that today. Like, I don't think there's anyone else that I'm really excited about playing outside of Luis Garcia at the pitcher position.
Yeah, I'd be really. I have a take again that maybe. We'll see. I think I just have a hunch of what people might do today. But Garcia definitely is in that spot where I think that DraftKings got it right at 9,200, making him the best, like the top overall arm in terms of price tag. And FanDuel, I just think the Mackenzie Gore spot's a little bit too much in terms of price, and we already talked about that. So, yeah, I think that on today's slate, there's not a lot of good pitching options, and so he kind of gravitates towards them. You add in everything else, like without just like you said, take Mexico City out of the picture. And then the spot's already good, and you throw that on top of it. You also have to include, I know these guys are flying, private and everything like that, making it pretty easy, but you're still traveling out of, into a different country, right? So there's everything else associated with that. So I know Houston's a good destination from Mexico City, so there's that too. But still, I think that that takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree.
All right, I think we can go ahead and focus on the prop side of things here and talk about some numbers we like. I guess I'd always like to have a hitter fantasy score for Jordan because of the walks counting in your favor. As far as anything else goes, Astros have a lot of really enticing things. Really wish they gave Jeremy Pena an actual number outside of a run number. But yeah, I think that Garcia strikeouts is an interesting decision to make. But maybe the pitcher fantasy score is something you want to take a look at.
Yeah, I don't mind the pitcher fantasy score at 36. I think his strikeout number is like a touch too high in all honesty, but like
Probably.
I think I'm fine with it regardless. I'd rather have the pitcher fantasy score if I'm going to go somewhere though.
Yeah, underdog has an Alvarez 1.5 total bases. They have Bregman 7.5 fantasy points as well. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of solid, strong options here. Definitely a grouping that you can get behind. Kyle Tucker fantasy scores is a touch too low, I think, as well, at 7.5.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. Yeah, love the Astros. So let's go ahead and move on here and discuss the last two games on the slate. Cincinnati and San Diego is going to be next. Right now, the Reds are a plus 188 underdog behind Luke Weaver. Blake Snell, Padres minus 225 at home. 8.5 is the total. Weather 57 degrees at Petco. Winds blowing out towards right at 10. Now, obviously, this is a pitcher-friendly park. The wind isn't a huge factor, but it at least is something to note there. No rain risk. I think that they'll have some sprinkles, but it's nothing that is going to take the pitchers out of consideration in terms of them leaving the game early. So we get this. Here's the spot that I wanted to touch on in terms of pitcher. We just saw this last time Blake Snell took the mound. He was like 70% owned against Chicago, and I hated the matchup. I think I did a solo podcast that day, and I told people stay the hell away from this spot for Blake Snell. And we ended up going Charlie Morton. Worked out really well for us. Did not work well for the industry. The walks are out of control, man. You can't figure out how to throw strikes consistently. I know he hasn't been giving up too many hits, but when he does, things really unravel there. I know that your earned runs themselves aren't a glaring piece, but the dude has not had a quality start this year. and I think it's because of the walks, just getting to a certain pitch limit. I think he's still working back from just getting back into his groove. Maybe we never see the elite Blake Snell again in terms of the amount of distance that he goes into a game. I think this is where people play him at starting pitcher 1 position on FanDuel, and I think it's a massive mistake.
So let me say my 2 sides here. My first side is that I would agree with you that it's probably a mistake. The stuff just doesn't look good recently. And at the end of the day, regardless of the matchup, you need to have some sort of skill set. And like you mentioned, he doesn't look like he can really throw strikes right now. He looks like he's struggling with pitch count stuff. It looks like they're not willing to let him go past 5 right now. So like, there's a lot of trouble there alone. I will say this is just so much better of a matchup than the Cubs were. It's so much better of a matchup than he's gotten all season long. This Cincinnati team's not very good against left-handed pitching. They're okay, but they're bottom 10 in the MLB. Like, there certainly are some spots where they are struggling. So, I don't know. I'm 50-50. I think Garcia's better at the end of the day. I think being at home, I think having better offense. We're going to talk about the offensive spot in just a second. I don't think it's that favorable for the Padres today compared to what the field thinks. So I think that even though the odds would lean towards Blake Snell, I would say that potentially you have Luis Garcia in a better spot to win his game, and you have a better strikeout scenario for sure. I can see the reasoning behind Snell. I'm not going to say it's like the awful play that it was when they faced off against the Cubs. I definitely don't think it's a great play though. I don't think he's better than Luis Garcia point per dollar wise.
That 100% I agree with. I probably should have also stated that I do agree with you that the Reds matchup is better for Snell. I just think that this is a clear, you know exactly where the ownership's going to be on this spot in terms of a DFS scenario. He's a massive favorite. The Padres are coming off of Mexico City, which I do have another point on when we get there. But people just saw them light up and put up a ton of runs this weekend, and they're the Padres. And we attack the Reds a lot, and I think this is a spot where there'll be a lot of leverage opportunities. The conversation when you switch over to DraftKings definitely changes, right? I think you have to really consider him to be an SP2 option, which I know I'm contradicting myself, but that's just the way that the sites work. So I think I think that the expectation is that he gets like 40 to 45 FanDuel points. Tell me when he is able to get a quality start.
Yeah, for sure. I can get behind that. I think you need to go 6 to be able to pay this price tag. I know it's 8K, so it doesn't sound like a lot. At least on FanDuel, it's 8K. But that's still 40 FanDuel points to get to 5X. Usually that's what you're targeting when you really like a pitcher is 5X. We've seen Luis Garcia get 5X at this price tag the last 2 games he's played in Tampa Bay and Toronto. And those are 2 really tough opponents. Snell's faced off against some tough opponents too, but I don't know. There's too many question marks around him to say that he's the for sure SP1 for you. The only way I could see you doing is maybe for money. I mean, like the Toronto stack is not
That's why
cheap.
People will do it.
Yeah, and it's good reasoning, right? But like I think you have the savings elsewhere today, so I'm not scared to pay up for my pitching today.
Yeah, last point I'll make here is that there are 4 guys in this projected lineup that have walk rates over 10%. I know that we don't talk about that as much, but in this spot specifically, if Blake Snell continues to struggle, could see that being a thing. I don't know. But I think the biggest thing here for the argument against Snell is the fact that they just haven't given him a leash. And it's not that they haven't given him a leash. He still had over 90 pitches in the last start. He just couldn't go a 6th inning because of how many walks he had.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm torn on it because I think we have to really highly consider him on DraftKings. But I think my ultimate call it's not like a player fade scenario. It's more like there's a better pitcher on the board on a 1-pitcher site.
Yeah, for sure.
That's more, and I don't want to touch props here unless we can talk about that in a second because I have not checked to see what his number for pitcher fantasy score is. If it's low, then we'll talk about it. But I do want to focus on the Padres side, and the first thing I want to mention, just overall in general, is that they are literally going from, I think, a better park factor than Coors Field, and then going back to a bottom, if not the worst park factor for hitting to start in a 24-hour span. So that's how I want to lead this off.
First of all, it's like twice the park factor that Coors Field has,
Yeah,
and
it's like
that
yeah,
might sound a little bit
Mexico City. Can you see my hand here?
Yeah,
Is this
yeah,
gonna okay?
yeah.
Yeah, it's Mexico City, Coors Field, and then it's like in the basement is where Petco Park is. So that's the
Yeah.
first one. Yeah.
I know it sounds a little hyperbolic, but like all the reporting that we got from the Mexico City game, so I kind of sent you one of the things is that like the ground was really hard supposedly, and so those ground balls that were going to pick up speed on those hits into the outfield, a lot of the outfielders were just saying like we're just going to let them pass us and hit the wall, and they'll come back at us at the wall faster than we're able to get our glove down and able to catch it, which is a crazy thing to think of in itself. Also,
Yeah.
the humidifiers that they had in the stadium, they were set to the same humidities as most MLB parks in the MLB. They very well, they definitely should have put it to where they have it in Coors, where it helps out keep down the park factor a little bit. But like, there are so many underlying factors on top of it just having crazy elevation that made that ballpark so prone to home runs and so prone to offense. You're 100% right in saying that it's going to be a little bit of a hangover for this Padres team, I feel like, to go from that to this now. And I will also make the case that Luke Weaver is not as bad of a pitcher as you think he is. The K numbers look really good. They don't look like they're false here. The swinging strike numbers back him up with a 15%. He's giving up a decent chunk of hard contact, but the problem with this Padres lineup, and something that we'll talk about all season long, they strike out in bunches in this
Mhm.
lineup. Projected lineup has a 26% K rate. You only have two hitters in this lineup with under a 20% K rate. I really like both those hitters. I think Juan Soto and Xander are both really solid options, but everyone else in this lineup has a chance to strike out 3 times against Weaver. And then the Cincinnati bullpen is not all that bad. They're top 15 in the MLB, so like I wouldn't say they're great. I think they rank as number 12 when it comes to weighted on base average allowed. So like they're not great for sure, but they're not awful either. So I don't know. I understand why people are putting this Padres team third. I guess because I don't really like a lot of stacks on the slate, I would say they're third, but I'm not super bullish on them like I am on Houston and like I am on Toronto.
Yeah, just based on park factor, I am gonna go with the Dodgers as my last team. So,
Yeah.
my third team. I think the Padres come
Okay.
in as fourth. I think that this is a very similar conversation with the Blue Jays, where they always are data driven, statistically set up at the top of the implied team totals list, and people take a look at that and they see that, and they're obviously a big favorite. I think they win the game. It's just hard to get behind a massive stack like that, where I think that LA is in a better spot.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's get to the actual. I just looked at the numbers, so I want to show everybody that the Blake Snell pitcher fantasy score number is at a number where I think it's really sketchy. It
Hmm.
feels low, and whenever that is the case, that means that it's a little bit sketchy, and it's at 32 and a half. He absolutely needs it the win. That's baked into this already, but I don't even know if he gets there if he doesn't go 5 innings or
Yeah.
6 innings.
Yeah. I mean you say it's low. I think it's kind of high in
I think
all
it's
honesty. He hasn't hit it once this season. Like he's been
I know,
under this number in
right?
every single game so far this year. So, I
Right.
don't know.
So like that's the consensus is like, are you okay with doing that on FanDuel? Like I even if he gets over that, are you happy with 32? Are you happy with 36? Like, you thankful that you won your bet, but that's a massive sweat, man.
Yeah, it certainly is. If he gets a hitter something, maybe it works out, or a pitcher ump. Sorry, if he gets a pitcher ump, maybe it works out a lot better for you. But if he gets a hitter ump, you really might be screwed on that one.
I would have loved to have had Blake Snell pitching in the Mexico series, but it is
I
what it
know.
is. Um, but yeah, okay, let's go ahead. I think that's one of the most important points of the entire board today, is how many people kind of, again, like, I don't want to say fall for it because I think it has really good qualities, but you have to you have to go a little bit deeper on this slate, so that's why we're kind of diving into that a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Anything you want to talk about in terms of Padres bats, or do you want to stay away from that one?
If there is a Soto number, 7.5 fantasy score, I can totally get behind that. The Xander 1.5 hits, runs, and RBI number two. I like both of those. I like both of those actually quite a bit.
Let me just take a quick look here because I know I've already posted the models in the Discord for Prize Picks hits, runs, RBIs. Um, surprisingly didn't have the greatest last 4 games. He had a one really, really good game. That was the first game, obviously, the one that put up 25 runs in. Um, yeah, he's cleared this number in 5 of the last 10. But I think that, Xander being where he's at in the lineup around everybody else, I think he's always a candidate to get back on track.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on here and talk about the last game on the board. It's going to be Philly and the LA Dodgers. Right now, the Phillies are coming in at a plus 138 clip on the road here as the underdog. Taijuan Walker, Gonsolin for the Dodgers, minus 164 at home. 8.5 is the total here. Will victory lap, what we called on the podcast the last time Tony Gonsolin was on a slate. He went massively under his strikeout total of 4, and he only got 1 in 3 1/3 innings. Now, what do we expect Dave Roberts and the Dodgers to do with Gonsolin to start out for his second start of the year?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. It should be interesting to see how far they're going to take him in this one. We know we had that call when he faced off against Pittsburgh, that strikeout number, I think it was the strikeout number, right? He was all the way up
4.
at like 4 on Prize Picks, and it was like, that's way too high. Take the under on that. It was probably one of the easier calls I think we've had all season long. So
Yeah.
that worked out for us. I imagine they'll extend him a little bit more here. Probably get him into the 80 range with his pitch count. I don't know how to view things with him. I mean, like, the start against the Pirates didn't look great. He didn't seem like he had all of his stuff really ready to go for that one. But it's not like this Phillies team is all that great with their hitting right now. So I guess you can take lefties. I wrote up Schwarber as one of my favorites to home run today. Like, I think it's just more so park factor based, Dodgers bullpen based, and all that stuff. But I think this Phillies team is more so a GPP stack than anything else.
Yeah. I like what some of these Phillies bring to the table today. I also am okay with staying away in cash and in spots where, like, I think you're reaching. It's because you just could get a spot where the Dodgers have 5 innings of bullpen arms. Like, that's as easy as that. I mean, maybe they let him go 4, maybe they let him go 5, but it's not like Gonsolin's bad. We just didn't believe in the strikeout number. So,
yeah, for sure.
But I do want to talk about the Dodgers. I think this is where I want to make the case that they are the third stack that people should be talking about and considering today. Outside of, I think, Dodgers over Padres potentially as a slate winner in terms of the DFS, and I think that you'll find yourself maybe winning a little bit more entries today if you go the Dodgers route. Now, Taijuan Walker hasn't necessarily been bad. He's actually been pretty good to start the season. The ground ball rate is the most alarming thing, where it's insanely high at 78%, 50% to righties, 78% to lefties. The strikeout numbers look pretty solid, right? Like, there's nothing to say bad about that there. The ISO, though, is very high against righties, and I think that some of this team should do pretty well against it. And just the way the Dodgers are built, at least the top half of the lineup, I think that can give him a little bit of a struggle. And you add in the fact that this game has some wind blowing out towards left center field. It just makes the park factor so much better than a spot like San Diego. I think that Walker is respectable. I just think that going up against the Dodgers anytime that there's wind blowing out here can do. I just think that that's where that kind of trumps there. So we also have some rain. Looks like it's going to be just fine to play through, though.
Yeah, so I'm not really bullish on either side here. Like I mentioned, I already really don't like that Phillies team. I think Dodgers are okay. It's really just going to rely on ground ball rate at the end of the day. Like, can they have hitters that don't hit the ball on the ground here as much? I think Mookie has a good chance of that. I think Freddie Freeman has a good chance of that. I think there's a few hitters, but more so than years past, there are hitters in this lineup that have decently high ground ball rates. So I'm pretty 50-50 on it. I think they're an okay stack. They probably don't rank as my third. They probably rank as my fourth, but I'm okay with saying they're a good tournament stack for sure. Taijuan Walker has shown the ability to get lots of hits against him, especially against some top tier teams. I mean, when he faced off against the Yankees and the Mariners this year, or his 2 starts where he allowed the most runs, and all the other starts where he didn't allow too many runs are against kind of bottom tier teams like Cincinnati and like the White Sox. So like I said, I could see Walker getting there for sure. It's just not something I'm going to be on personally.
I'm not going to be able to do this in DFS, and maybe he makes the cut for a 5th pick. But again, I think there's some NBA spots that are pretty good today too. But Max Muncy, too expensive on the actual DFS sites themselves. And obviously at a loaded third base position, but he is a guy that is more of a fly ball hitter, and that's going to show up in the stats as well. So um, maybe there's an actual scenario where the two of those things kind of balance out, and the launch angle is in a spot where it benefits him. So as long as he's going to strike out once, if not twice, in the spots, but I could see Max Muncy also taking Walker pretty deep here.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, props. I think I wanted to at least just touch base on that for Muncy. He has not hit the number recently in the last 5 games. Has only cleared it twice. Mookie Betts, I think you can consider the BVP there. It's pretty solid. He's hitting 500 against Walker in his career. Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm banking more on the negatives for the Padres to where the Dodgers, some of these stars could sneak in and have some good games. That's
Yeah,
more of where I'm leaning.
I don't mind Freddie Freeman. He's cleared this number 4 out of the last 5 in terms of hitter fantasy score. I think that's a good number for him. And the ground ball rate, he has the lowest ground ball rate on the team. I think it's like mid 20s. So I think he has his best chance here against Taijuan Walker. But that's about it for me. I'd probably pass on everything else personally.
Yeah, like we said, small board today on just in general. The card's small, but even smaller are the opportunities for actual plays here. But we'll figure it out and dial in and choose the best ones, because these are the kinds of slates where people will reach because they will just want action, and that's exactly where we can try to hold back the reins a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, that's it for the podcast. My final thoughts here. I think it's very simple where we lean here. I think that we'll be a little bit lower on some of these Padres hitters. Where we'll capitalize is being a little bit heavier on guys like Toronto and Houston. And I think the biggest thing is just Garcia over Snell, I think is the big winner today.
Yeah, I completely agree. Getting your Blue Jays bats right, finding the right value for today, that's the way to go. And I think we're on a pretty solid track. I feel pretty good about where we're at. So, Jared, any other final thoughts? If not, let's get out of here, man.
Nope. Appreciate everybody hanging out. We're here Monday through Friday, every single weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, you can check out all of our past podcasts. We do a similar format every single day. So any suggestions or comments about the show that you think that you want to see, we're all ears. And we're always sweating things out in the Discord every single day. So make sure to head on over there if you're interested.
Yes, sir. Exactly. All right, let's get out of here. Thank you all for listening. As always, my name is Joshua Riemer. Good night and good skill.